To our listeners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We begin here this afternoon. A gathering of African champions in digital spaces is currently taking place in Lusaka, Zambia, mapping out how the internet and technological advancement can enhance continental development. Focusing on Ubuntu or oneness, the annual Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum is calling for embracing of technology in Africa. Arthur Davis Sikopo, our correspondent in Zambia, is in attendance.
Zambia is currently hosting the Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum, a platform where matters on digital policy on the continent are shaped and policy direction debated in quest for a unified and safe continental engagement using technology. DRIF has brought in one place over 1,000 participants from across the continent. That includes civil society, technology companies, government, academia, media, and other stakeholders in Lusaka. The meeting is mainly centering around internet rights in the global south and how a united technological Africa can be achieved. Zambia's Minister of Technology and Science, Felix Mutati, has spoken at the event, emphasizing the need on the use of ICTs to enhance the African agenda.
You need to use data to create and enable investment, to create opportunity. So once you have done that, then you are on the journey towards Ubuntu.
South Africa's advocate, Pansy Tlakula, the chairperson of Information Regulator, has also spoken, highlighting the need for countries to collaborate in improving the digital space. For Avit Ndaiziga of Burundi, a presenter and participant, the forum is one that the continent needs in its development.
Or the lack of law, enabling people to access information in this digital era is a big threat to the digital Ubuntu or to digital opportunities. We were just tackling it in the perspective of Burundi, but also just trying to look at how it is in different countries of Africa to see if countries of Africa have enabled people to access information in a legal and easy way.
The UN systems in Zambia is also in attendance, and through its country lead, Beatrice Muntali has shared his perspective on freedom of speech and expression using digital tools. For Mr. Mutati, he took this as an opportunity to share what the Zambian government has in store for its citizens. Further, hoping all African countries continue bettering the cyberspace for their citizens.
We are also working on other pieces of legislation, including the Startup Bill. And the Startup Bill, one of the critical features in this bill is for us to create what we're calling a venture capital fund. We are also revising our data protection to create opportunity.
The meeting is being hosted by Paradigm Initiative in collaboration with the Zambian government, Bloggers of Zambia, the Internet Society Zambian chapter, and other international entities. And Richard Mulonga of Bloggers of Zambia speaks in one side meeting.
We acknowledge AI is in early stages, but you see the strategy also seeks to accelerate adoption of AI, like in health, in agriculture, in education. And by the way, we have one of the American companies, they're actually using artificial intelligence to map where the minerals are.
The 3-day event is scheduled to close Thursday. Reporting for Channel Africa in Lusaka, Zambia, I'm Arthur Davis, Scopo.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 12 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. We take you to Malawi now, where the country's Ministry of Trade and Industry has settled the affiliation fees owed to the Fédération Internationale de Musiciens, that's FIM, on behalf of the Musicians Union of Malawi, MUM. The General Secretary of MUM, Tony Chitimatima, says the total payment of 1.7 million Malawian kwacha, which equates to $980 by the department, will significantly alleviate the union's financial burden and enable it to meet its international commitments. For more on this, we joined this afternoon by the General Secretary of the Musicians Union of Malawi, Thami Ngubeni. A very good afternoon to you and welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you so much. Afternoon.
So, could you help explain to us what it is that you were concerned about regarding these outstanding fees? One of the things that you've highlighted is that this might impact Malawian musicians from benefiting from global networks as well as advocacy for their rights. Could you break this down for us? Give us a clearer understanding of how exactly musicians were impacted by these outstanding affiliation fees.
Yeah, generally when we are talking about the music industry, and not only music industry, maybe each and every business that a person does in the world, it relies upon connections, it relies upon networking. So as an organization, Musicians Union of Malawi, also we do rely upon networking and also exposure to other unions. So for us to be affiliated to FIM, it's one of the achievements that our union made, because it has been helping the union in terms of connections, exposure, networking with other unions globally. Not only that, there are other donors who comes in to support the unions, or other partners who comes in to partner with the unions by trusting another organization, which is maybe a global organization. For example, in the case of FIM, other organizations were trusting us because of FIM. For example, union to union, by providing some projects to improve the welfare of the musicians in terms of capacity building, in terms of teaching them how they can market their music, some workshops like those ones. So in this case,
could one say and summarize, Tony, that there are some economic as well as developmental advantages to being affiliated with FIM in the sense of global networking, maybe collaborations and opportunities for musicians from Malawi?
Exactly. Exactly. There are so many benefits.
And how far behind was the union in paying its fees to FIM, and why was it important for the Ministry of Trade and Industry to step in and settle these on your behalf?
Yeah, the areas were from 2023, 2024, and 2025. Just a point of correction. We did not get the support from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We got the assistance from Engineer Vitumbiko Mumba, the minister himself. In fact, we requested this assistance when he was Minister of Labor, because as a union, we also fall under Ministry of Labor, where we regard music as an employment. So we had to request him when he was Minister of Labor. And then he promised to say, I'm going to assist you as an individual and not through my office.
And why is this? It's very interesting, Tony, that you mentioned that the minister has assisted the union in his personal capacity. Why could the Ministry of Trade and Industry or even the Department of Labor not come through for you? What were the challenges there?
Okay, we identified the potential in him in terms of assisting the artists, because recently he also assisted some artists, ferrying them from Malawi to Jamaica to perform. And this one, he managed to do it within his own capacity as a minister, because we have had so many ministers, but sometimes it takes a passion of somebody to come in and assist where there is a problem. So we had to approach him when we saw and identified his willingness and passionate in terms of assisting artists. So when we approached him, he said, no problem. I'm going to come in as another person. At the same time, Vitumbiko Mumba, he has been an artist. He's an artist in short, because he loves music, he plays music. So with that, we saw it to be something that the person has in his by heart to assist and come in to assist our organization as an individual.
And how is the organization going to ensure sustainability? You've been behind, as you say, for a good 3 years. How are you going to ensure that moving forward, you are not going to be relying on the goodwill of the minister and others who have a heart for musicians and who want to assist? What are your plans to ensure that you will be able to stand on your own as a union?
Okay, there are two plans that we have. The first plan is to enhance our membership, to make sure that we have more members that will bring more revenue, and then be able to be paying the affiliation fees sustainably. The other thing, which is a landslide plan, not plan as such, but it has already been done. We were fighting for having a council. This one we call it National Arts and Heritage Council. This one we have been there for so long, and through the same minister when he was Minister of Labour and other ministries, and as well as the president himself, we had to lobby to make sure that the bill is passed in Parliament. We are glad that the bill was passed, and as we are speaking, it is in implementation stage. So we hope by next year we may have an implementation of this bill. So once this one is implemented, because in the bill there is a provision where government is going to be sponsoring the council. So it will be sponsoring the council, the Arts Council, whereby the musicians are part of the council. So we will be benefiting, and this will be part of the budgeted items annually.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tony Chitimatima, for that update. That's the MUM thanking Mumba for the essential aid that he has provided for musicians in Malawi, sponsorship provided by Diplomats Car. It's exactly 20 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. We'll be back with more of your leading stories from the African continent.
Zochitika ndi Madaphiri. Kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu a nyumba ya malamulo mu dziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana zawo pa zinthu zosiyanasiyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo, ndipo kondani Nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu akukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mu nyumba imeneyi ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti state of national address imene a president Dr. Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mu nyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi, chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kubuka ndewu mnyumbayi. Leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Pasama Suleiman, kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa mu sona imeneyi, akuti imene ayichotse.
Zochitika ndi Madaphiri. Lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 21 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, South Africa's new employment equity regulations have introduced significant changes to South African businesses, and this is particularly those with 50 or more employees or organs of state. The 2025 Employment Equity Act regulations significantly raise the bar for compliance, introducing stricter enforcement mechanisms and placing a sharp focus on sector-specific numerical targets such as BBBE, or broad-based black economic empowerment, otherwise known as a triple BEE, as some would say, that might be met over 5 years. To unpack this 2025 Employment Equity Act and the impact it will have on triple BEE, we are joined on the line by Mandlilakhe Cilichana, a Development and Employment Equity Specialist at Strategy Labour Solutions. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, Thami, and good afternoon to your listeners as well.
Thank you, Mandlilakhe. Now, can you briefly explain the key changes that have been introduced in the new employment equity regulations and how these differ from the previous framework?
Yeah, Thami, there's quite a few amendments that you'll find in the new Employment Equity Act that was signed in 2022, however, being made effective 1 January of this year. So I think if I can just mention a few, the first one is that all employers who have less than 50 employees and previously used to comply because of their turnover, depending on how much you're making a year as an organization and the industry that you're in, those employers will no longer be required to comply with the provisions that are actually affecting designated employers, meaning that they are no longer considered to be designated employers. And I think the other one, Thami, that is probably worth mentioning as well is that with the new amendment, particularly for Section 15A, there's an introduction now of what we call sectorial targets. So the benchmark for companies to be able to achieve their targets was previously based on what we call the EAP, Economically Active Population, but now the minister and the department have now changed that to say, because previously certain industries would complain that they can't, or rather they're not able to achieve their targets because of the challenges that they're facing in their various industries, they have since now said, okay, let then those industries have their own separate benchmarks so that they can then set their targets depending on what they and where they're operating and what they are doing. And I think the last one maybe that is noteworthy as well is that there is now Section 53 that is now being made effective as well, whereby if you are doing business with the state or organ of state, you then need to have the certificate of compliance, which was not necessarily, it was there previously, but it was not necessarily effective.
And where does this then leave the issue of the triple BE scorecards? How are those impacted, and what areas should businesses be prioritizing in order to remain compliant?
So I think what is important to highlight, Thami, is that there's a huge link between employment equity and BE, particularly if you're looking at the one or two of the elements, or one of the elements of BE that you need to comply with would be either management control or will be employment equity, depending on the sector that you're in. Now, those elements, their targets and how they're actually calculated to afford you the points that you need are then benchmarked on the requirements for employment equity. Take for instance, if employment equity says that you have a target of, let's say, 40% of your employees being African males, colored males, or Indian or white employees, you then need to then firstly convert that to accommodate you what we refer to as designated employers, meaning that the targets will then be set on what employment equity has set, but then slightly converted. Now, the issue is then that if you don't then achieve your employment equity targets, you are more likely not to have then achieved your BE targets, meaning then that you might not then acquire the necessary points that you were targeting in that particular element as a company. And I think what is important then that employers should actually look into to try and pay attention to is then that, well, they need to set targets that are actually realistic and make sure that they actually achieve their targets, because at the end of the day, if you don't achieve the targets that you have set for yourself and those that are prescribed as per Section 15A of the Employment Equity Act, you will find yourself then not being able to achieve your BE points. And remember, when you don't acquire the relevant level for BE, you might find yourself in a space where you might lose contracts that you might have either with government or other companies that are conscious in terms of BE compliance.
We've already seen some legal action being taken by the likes of the Democratic Alliance, saying that this act is an unconstitutional discrimination act. How do these regulatory changes align with South Africa's broader transformation and economic inclusion goals? And what are your thoughts on the differences between Triple BEE as we've known it and the introduction of these acts now and these amendments?
I think, look, we will have to wait time and see what will then be that outcome in relations to, the challenges that the DA is posing and other organizations as well. What is important, however, is that to understand that these changes are actually still consistent with what Employment Equity Act seeks to achieve, because there's two things there. Number one, to ensure that there is no unfair discrimination in companies, and two, that there is equitable representation in companies. The only difference, though, is that previously, as I said earlier on, the targets were more or less holistic in the sense that how they were set. But now they are zooming and focusing on each industry, whereby each industry will have its own target. So that is still actually consistent with what then the Act is trying to achieve. What it has done actually, it has become a lesser burden to employers. Say, for instance, if you are operating in the wholesale and retail space that is already, dominated by females in general, if you then have a high target for males, you might then struggle to then achieve that target, as an employer. Similarly, if you're operating in mining, construction that are male-dominated currently, and there's a high target for females, you might then struggle to actually achieve those targets. However, with the new sectoral codes, then the idea is that government wants to gradually achieve its targets so that it can go and align with the actual representation of employable and employed people in our country.
Mandilake Ilichana, thank you so much for breaking that down for us this afternoon. We thank you for your time.
Thank you, Thami, and thank you to your listeners as well.
Thank you so much. He is a development and employment equity specialist at Strategy Labour Solutions. Now, the South African Department of Trade, Industry and Competition has committed over $5 billion towards a transformation fund for Triple BEE. Minister Park Stau said that the fund is aligned with the country's broader economic goals, including re-industrialization and localization aimed at restructuring the economy, creating jobs and driving inclusive growth. He made these remarks earlier today during a media breakfast session in Johannesburg. We'll break this down in just a moment. But for now, it's gone exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time as we head over to the economics desk where Bontle Hedbush is standing by for your latest market indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon. For a final look at our indicators this afternoon, $1 is trading at 18 Rand 53 in South Africa. In Botswana, it's at 13 Pula 53. In Namibia, it's trading at 18 Namibian dollars 53. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 27 kwacha 87 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 42. Ethiopia, 133 birr 7. In Uganda, it's trading at 3,000 shillings 641. And in Tanzania, it's at 2,000 shillings 689. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 601. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 50 Egyptian pounds 77. In Tunisia, it's trading at 2 dinar 974. In Algeria, it's at 131 dinar 64. The Moroccan dirham is trading at 915 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,853 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,309 and platinum at $966.80 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $63.45 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Bontle Hedbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And standing by with your latest from the world of sport, here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. A very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. We'll start with the story. So this week, Zimbabwean businessman Tendani Ernie Sebata announced his company Sebata Consolidated Holdings have cancelled a multi-million partnership deal with Botswana football side Township Rollers FC, citing significant governance issues regarding non-compliance, as well as allegations of misrepresentation regarding the club's ownership structure. So the company entered into a 5-year deal with the club back in June of last year, making an initial investment of about $500,000 to cushion the team's daily operations. However, almost a year into the deal, Sebata has now withdrawn with the club's ownership structure in dispute. Joining us live from Gaborone in Botswana this afternoon is broadcast journalist Solomon Kakua, who's been following the story for us, and he's going to help us exactly understand what happened here and how did this come to be. A very good afternoon to you, Solomon. Thank you so much for your time on Channel Africa. These are serious allegations made by Sebata Holdings. Governance issues, non-compliance issues, as well as allegations of misrepresentation regarding the club's ownership structures. What do we know about this and how did this come to be?
Thank you so much, Rachel, and your lovely listeners. Maybe let's start with this one to just explain how the club, the model looks like when you own Township Rollers. Township Rollers is a society with 100% shares. Then the 100% shares that they have, they are given to a trust that is taking care of the club, representing the interest of the society. They have members who then are elected to be the chairman and the committee that support the chairman. So they get the mandate from the delegation or the members that are fully registered as Township Rollers holding members. So under the club, they do have managing companies. There are 2 managing companies under Township Rollers. There's Popa Holding, and then there's Township Rollers, PTY Ltd. These are companies that manages the club. So what happened is when they had the first investor being Jack Disha, he was given Township Rollers, PTY Ltd. That is the company that he was running the club with. What happened after is that when they parted ways with Jack Disha, it was at the towards the end of the season, just before May. That's when they got started, before our season ended. So they had to wait for them to process that and get all the monies that were won by the club during that time and everything that was part of the deal before he closes the chapter. So they left the owners they left his name under the owners who were owning 80% from the society. So each and every investor that comes to Township Rollers, they give you 80% from what they're holding, and then the society remains with 20%. That was the deal. The deal breaker then was that after investing in Township Rollers, Jack Disha wanted 100%. Then the deal was off. When Sebata came in now, Sebata Group, they came in April last year. They found that Jack Disha was still holding the Township Rollers PTY Ltd, right? Sebata Group were then given Popa Holdings to run the club with that managing company. Then later on, Sebata learned that Jack Disha was still holding Township Rollers PTY Ltd. Then he gave them an ultimatum to say, if you're not giving me Township Rollers PTY Ltd by the 31st of December 2024, I'm leaving. They went back to Jack Disha. They asked, they inquired, they engaged, and then they went to Register of Societies, and they found out that because they had the evidence and the letters that were written by the previous investor, that's when they then came in and they changed the names of the company owners to Township Rollers PTY, and then they brought in Sebata. Remember that he was holding 80% on the other side. The investment structure from the contract, it was 7 million per season that he had promised to inject at Township Rollers. They moved to the other one, which now the deal was to put in 8 million per season into the Township Rollers project. What I've seen and what I'm aware of at the moment, Rachel, is that the contract when he moved from Popa Holding to Township Rollers PTY, they never signed a contract from December last year till date. They started negotiating. The negotiations was about Sebata also wanted 100%. Remember this, according to the model that they're using, when they give you 80% of the club, you run the club 100%. The society, they become the overseers of everything, but everything is done by the investor and the people that are employed by the investor, starting with the salaries and who is employed, who is the coach, players that are being signed.
Yes.
That is why when Sebata Group came in, they came with the likes of Sipo from South Africa. I think you know him as an agent. He was one of those who were managing the club. So that's where the fallout came in. When he asked for 100%, they went to inquire with the members this past weekend at Royal Array, and the members were clear to say, we are not giving any investor 100% of the club. So we remain with our 20% as a society. That's where the situation started.
And you've given us a comprehensive, framework of exactly what happened here, Solomon. We are running out of time. So with the announcement made just a few days ago by Sabata Holdings that they will be basically ending this partnership, does it cease to exist as from today? Because I do understand that the league is only concluding in the next couple of weeks towards the end of May. What's going to happen to the players' salaries, the staff salaries for May? Does that agreement cease to exist today, or it will only cease to exist at the end of May?
There is no contract, there is no deal at the moment. At the moment, remember that when he moved from Popa Holding, he resigned so that he can be a shareholder at Township Rollers Spirituality. So now there is no contract, so there's imminent departure from the club. So the club will have to figure out their next stop moving forward to end the remaining games of the season. And
the reaction quickly from the club, what have they said about this announcement from Sabata Holdings?
Nothing has come out from the club at the moment. They have since distanced themselves from everything that has happened, and we're still trying to figure out here and there. We're getting non-official, interviews and conversations there with the club, but at the moment they have not come out with an official statement. We're expecting them to release a statement by Friday, which is expected to be a joint statement with Sabata Group.
Solomon, thank you so much for your time this afternoon on Channel Africa. Solomon Kakua, a broadcast journalist based out in Botswana, helping us understand exactly, this agreement or this non-agreement between Sabata Holdings and now Township Rollers, also alluding to the fact that there was essentially no contract in this regard, and just maybe this agreement ceased to exist as from today. That's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa in business. Africa in business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa. It is exactly 4:40 Central African time. If you've got any business stories, any business of sports stories that you would like to share with us from anywhere on the African continent, do let us know. Send us those stories on newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. You are indeed our eyes and ears on the ground. You may be in a remote place, or maybe news hasn't quite gotten to us, but you know of it. To make sure that you keep us on the continent in the know. Send us those stories at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, you can call us on +27 11 714 4459.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Now, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in South Africa, in collaboration with the MTN Group, have just hosted the South Africa-Nigeria Private Sector Engagement Session in Johannesburg. The dialogue is part of ongoing efforts to deepen economic cooperation between South Africa and Nigeria, two of the continent's most influential economies. It sought to create a platform for meaningful dialogue between public and private sector stakeholders, supporting trade and investment facilitation between the two countries. Joining us to dissect this further is one of the delegates Pondi Kambali from Powerfleet. A very good afternoon to you and welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Pleasure to be on your radio, and good afternoon to your auditors also.
Well, it's great to have you with us. I mean, you have first-hand information. Could you tell us more about what it is that made you want to be a part of this engagement, and what are some of the key takeaways from discussions and dialogue thus far?
First of all, thank you very much. I'm from a company called Powerfleet. We are a global leader in vehicle tracking and mobile asset management around the world, operating in 35 countries in Africa. So I'm the regional sales manager, and I've been with the company for the past 20 years. And Nigeria is our biggest market, yet the potential to grow is huge. We can multiply our presence in Nigeria currently maybe by tenfold. But the whole process is hindered by regulations and also very simple issues such as visa, for example. And I think what His Excellency Minister Tao has started, it's a dialogue that I'm hoping that will result in resolving all these issues that business people are facing, not only in Nigeria. Yesterday the focus was Nigeria, but it is across the whole continent.
And in your view, what needs to be done in order to address the challenges that you've highlighted, the visa challenges and regulations, for example?
I think, Thami, the discussion should be, I understand it can be at the government levels, but I think this is an AU discussion, the African Union discussions. We need to look at the broader spectrum of the whole problems. Moving around in the continent, doing business in the continent is something that we should encourage, we should promote, and African Union should be leading that. But I understand government also have a lot to play in that. Hence, today's meeting was about South Africa and Nigeria, the two biggest powerhouses in the continent, the biggest economies in the continent. And the discussions, this is very encouraging. Everybody was in the same on the same level as to say the issue of visa needs to be resolved ASAP to enable South African companies, Nigerian companies to trade. Just to give you a very basic example, in February I flew to Nigeria. We had to spend 5 hours at a bureau called Visa on Arrival to process the entry visa. 5 hours, that is too much for business. Okay, and today in East African countries, I can fly in Tanzania, I can fly in Kenya without a visa as a business. That is an advantage for me. I can go in, do my meeting, and come back, and then maybe secure a deal. I cannot do that in Nigeria.
I must say, Pondi, this is really not a new dialogue or a new challenge.
Exactly.
And it's one that is not unique to South Africa and Nigeria. But as you mentioned, that this is really an AU issue. Is there a proactive stance to actually ensure that this goes beyond the rhetoric? Is there political will for policy changes in that direction? And I'm asking you to really base this on the discussions that were had today.
I don't think there is political will, being it at AU level, being it at government level. I think the African continent, countries need to move beyond the issue of illegal immigration, for example, which is an issue that valid. But again, encouraging businesses, trading between African countries, the intra-trade that we have been waiting for this free intra-trade zone that still nothing has been implemented. This will help countries to develop their economies to become competitive. And I think that will resolve the illegal immigration issue. I think we need to look at it at a bigger picture, and it's not an issue that has to be resolved between two countries. But again, it's at a continent level that the solution has to come. But the initiative the minister has taken is very important, and I hope in the next month we're going to be in Nigeria to make the counter to Nigeria and also discuss that point. This is a good stepping stone, I think, forward to resolve this issue. As you said, it's a perennial issue that has been around. I've been working in Africa for the past 20 years, and I know what it means moving around in the continent.
Pondi Kambali, we thank you so much for your insight this afternoon. It's been a pleasure indeed.
Thank you.
Pondi Kambali is from Powerfleet. He's the sales manager there. He takes us to exactly 4:47 Central African Time.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Still staying on issues of the Department of Trade and Industry, I had mentioned a bit earlier on today around a commitment of over $5 billion towards a transformation fund for broad-based black economic empowerment. Minister Park Stau, who is the Minister of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, says that the fund is aligned with the country's broader economic goals, including re-industrialization as well as localization, and is aimed at restructuring the economy, creating jobs and driving inclusive growth. He made these remarks earlier today during a media breakfast session in Johannesburg. Channel Africa's business reporter, Innocent Somosa, has more.
According to South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Stau, the newly announced 100 billion rand transformation fund aims to address the inclusion of historically disadvantaged individuals and communities in key industries while promoting inclusive growth.
The fund is envisioned to mobilize 100 billion rand over the term of this administration, and it represents one of the most coordinated and impactful efforts yet to enhance access to finance, technical support and market opportunities for black-owned, managed and controlled enterprises, especially MSMEs, cooperatives, and businesses in rural and township areas. At its core, the Transformation Fund aims to address the long-standing structural exclusion in our economy. Allow me to emphasize that this fund is not seeking to impose any new demands on business and industry, but rather it will consolidate funding efforts through enterprise and supplier development and other obligations as prescribed by the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Codes of Good Practice.
He believes the Transformation Fund positions South Africa to play a greater role in driving industrialization and economic integration across the African continent, particularly under the African Continental Free Trade Area framework. Susan Mangole, Deputy Director General for Transformation and Competition, outlines some of the targeted industries the fund will prioritize.
For us to be able to achieve inclusive economic growth, we need to have at least all the sectors showing the actual black ownership increasing at the same time. So here you have construction, you have forestry, and I think tourism as well as property being some of the ones that shows that growth. So I guess now the question is why Transformation Fund? Section 11.2b of the BBBE Act is amended. It actually stipulates that comprehensive plans must be developed to address the financing of BBBE, including creation of incentive scheme to support the growth of black-owned and managed enterprise.
Mzi Diamani is from the National Empowerment Fund.
In terms of the other initiatives of government, like the Spaza Shop Fund that was recently announced, so government is actually working on a number of initiatives. And the Spaza Shop Fund was actually an initiative that was seeking to address a specific challenges within specific communities. And it is actually, it's actually in line with what we're trying to do with the Transformation Fund. But what we're saying here is that there is a need for aggregation so that we are able to address those priorities in a concerted manner. Because the issues that we're grappling with in the rural areas and also in the townships, they need more resources than what we currently have.
The department says the Transformation Fund will not only drive structural change in South Africa's economy, but also unlock opportunities across the continent, paving the way for a more inclusive and sustainable growth path. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Let's take a look now at the latest business and financial market developments. And for this, we're joined by Lindile Malchas, investment strategist at Absa Investment. A very warm welcome to you. Good to have you with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Thami, and a pleasure to be on the show.
So let's start off perhaps looking at Aspen's share price that plunged by more than 30% on Wednesday. This follows the company's announcement on profit warning due to its contractual disputes with regards to its mRNA manufacturing agreement. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, so we did see an announcement from the company last week, Wednesday, speaking to some of the risks that had arisen, particularly related to the manufacturing business. And as you mentioned, there was a contractual dispute. And as a result, the company did guide for lower earnings from the manufacturing business for the full year of 2025. So expecting that to come in 2 billion rands lower. But the company did also warn that it is still early days, and as a result, they cannot estimate the full financial impact, and particularly going forward for the next couple of years. And as a result, markets did react negatively to this guidance, particularly with the business being uncertain on some of their financial impacts. And you have seen the share price come down as a result. But I think subsequent to that, we did see some buying of the share price, and it did see a small relief rally, but the share price still down from where we saw it last week.
And how serious is this dispute? Is it one that could lead to an end of that manufacturing agreement, thus impacting Aspen in quite a significant way long term? Or is it something that is resolvable?
Yes, so I think it is quite serious. I'm not sure about it leading to the end of the manufacturing business, but it certainly has financial implications. The company did highlight that they are setting out an impairment of about 770 million, and this is in respect of some of the technology that will be part of their contractual agreement and part of the manufacturing business as well. So I think from that perspective, that's why markets did view this announcement as a bit more negative, but I think we will have to have a wait-and-see approach as the company comes out with more news on this as well.
And Linda, let's focus a bit on the VAT increase reversal and the impact that's had on companies. You will remember the moment it was announced, or at least there was talk and speculation that it was indeed going to become a reality. Businesses started making contingency plans to actually increase VAT by that 0.5%. Now that is not to be, how has this impacted business?
Yes, definitely. I think maybe from a political perspective, it does bring to questions, particularly from investors' point of view, around the stability of the GNU. Firstly, as you have seen a bit of disagreements, and particularly the reversal of the VAT increase are stemming from that as well. So it does lead to reduced sentiment around the government of national unity. And from a business consumer standpoint, point of view, we do think that it is a positive as a result of that, as we were estimating the VAT increase to have an impact, impact on inflation. So that coming in quite positive from an inflation point of view, but from a government and a budget point of view, there are some questions on whether and how the government will be able to plug that shortfall that they were expecting to get from the increased VAT, and they have implications from a government spending point of view, and we may see some cuts within expenditure, particularly in critical areas such as education and healthcare, where government had looked at adding capacity there as well.
You spoke about inflation there. We see South Africa's inflation dropping to 2.7%. That is really the lowest seen in 5 years. What are the drivers behind this decline?
Yes, so we are seeing inflation that did soften quite a bit in the month of March, coming in at 2.7%, and also slowing significantly from the previous print of 3.2%. Also, surprising markets are positively markets expecting a print of around a 3%. Some of the major drivers there continue to be on the back of muted demand, as you see in core inflation remaining quite steady. And some of the positive implications that we are seeing from this lowering of interest rates is that we may have some further room from the SARB for a rate cut. However, this outlook is threatened by some of the developments that are happening on the global side, which does pose upside risks to inflation as well.
We'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Lindile Malchas, thank you so much for taking us through the markets today. Thank you. That's Lindile Malchas. He's investment strategist at Absa Investments. And one of the global pointers that he was talking about there is the upcoming release of the US GDP. The markets are there expecting a moderate increase of 0.3%. That's from Q1. And you'll remember that's from a prior print of 2.4%. We'll delve into that a little bit later on as well. It's 2 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African Time. Bonjour, Jolie Joël.
Bonjour, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa. Alors, sur Vue d'Afrique, il sera question du Mali et du Sénégal. Merci de rester connectés. Merci.
Merci. And also coming up at the top of the hour, come 5 p.m., your news in French. Thank you so much to the entire Africa in Business team. Onele Nzinzi with the news, Buntle Hetbush on the economic markets, as well as Musibudi Makura bringing us the sport today. And also a very big thank you to our producer, Mabo Buluka, for the production of the show, as well as our technical and social media team. It's gone exactly 30 seconds to 5 p.m. Central African Time. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the team, give yourself a splendid Workers' Day, which comes in tomorrow. It is an international one, so all you workers out there, you are seen, you are recognized. Our technical producer, Ndando Lutuli, and social media, Nzako Mashaba. From us, it's goodbye and good night.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et votre 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine. Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bonjour à tous et merci d'être encore avec nous sur Canal Afrique pour suivre Vue d'Afrique, le magazine d'actualité africaine en langue française. Nous émettons 2